Hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to another live Manchester United news, transfer news, takeover news, and general news show. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a lot of news coming out about Paul Mitchell. Who's Paul Mitchell? What will he add? Other people being linked to United, like Jean-Claude Blanc, David Brasfield, whatever he's called, Michael Edwards, all the people linked to United, all the people that could be involved in Sir Jim's thing. We're going to speak about the Qataris. Is there any hope for Qatar? But basically, there's been reports coming out from credible sources like The Times that Arnold and Murtough's job is in the air. Reports are coming out that, Ratcliffe has decided that Murtough will be sacked if he's successful as of Thursday. And there are reports coming out that John Murtough could be gone within the next few weeks. With Paul Mitchell being available. Paul Mitchell obviously left Monaco because he wanted to spend more time with family. He didn't want to be abroad. He's obviously based in Manchester, whereas Manchester United, Manchester. So we're gonna dive. we're gonna dive. I'm ill at the moment. We're gonna dive in to a few things. Look, I normally do 45-minute live shows, sometimes 15 minutes if we have a guest on, obviously the hour. But this probably will be a shorter live show because my throat is like gives up. I blame the Glazers, but the United Muppeteers have also done a really good transfer report indicating what we're looking at: centre backs, right wingers, a physical number 8 right backs as well. So there's loads to get in today's show, which is why I've decided to go live as well. But lots of reports that Murtough could be on the verge of getting sacked. So this is obviously we'll go through the less credible reports and then we'll go into the more credible reports. So it was said that Manchester United is set to axe John Murtough. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is set to axe John Murtough upon his arrival to United. There's reports coming out right now of obviously loads of reports about Paul Mitchell from credible people, but lots of reports are coming out right now that Sir Jim has it planned that when he's appointed as of Thursday, when that goes through, when he starts to get some control, because it's believed that he will get sporting control, that John Murtough will be sacked almost instantly. And I guess the ideal candidate to replace him is Paul Mitchell. There are other names that we're going to get into, but there's a lot of reports and indication that Murtough is going to be sacked, and I assume Arnold will be going with him. I think the fact that we've been so heavily linked to the likes of Paul Mitchell, but also other names as well, says to me I do think there will be a complete overhaul of structures, complete structural overhaul, and all of that as well, just because of the clear links of people we've been done. And look, I do apologise if my voice is a bit, but we've got to power through. It was said as well, this was said by more credible sources. So some less credible sources have basically said that it's already been decided by Ratcliffe that Murtough will go and he'll be replaced by Paul Mitchell, and then Arnold might go, and there's a number of names to replace Arnold. Now, more credible sources like The Times have said the future of a number of senior officials at Manchester United, including Arnold and Murtough, will be up in the air should Jim Ratcliffe take control of football operations at the club when his purchase of a minority stake is complete. So the Times haven't really jumped to the conclusion. Other sources are saying that it's already been decided by Ratcliffe, if he's successful, that Murtough will be sacked. The Times have just said that Murtough and Arnold's future is very much up in the air. It's looking very unlikely they're going to be here, and a lot of credible sources are pretty much ruling out Murtough and Arnold staying at the club much longer. Now, of course, we're going to speak about Sir Jim Ratcliffe and him likely to become the new owner of United and all of that. But I think, right now there's a lot of news coming out on Ratcliffe, new stadium, bringing in this player, bringing in that player. Could he bring Todibo from Nice? He's going to sack Paul Mitchell. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. But we don't know that. We don't know what Ratcliffe's bid entails. Now, it looks like it's going to be Ratcliffe because the Qatar is out. And the best case scenario we've got now that it's probably going to be Ratcliffe is that he completely gets the Glazers out of this club as quick as he can. He appoints a proper footballing structure. He invests properly because this club does generate loads of money. I've always said this, the best case scenario at United is, because we're a club that generate a lot of money, is that, Ratcliffe gets rid of the Glazers completely. He doesn't use United to profit off or take dividends out, and he puts the right people in. But the thing that worries me, and I've said this time and time again, is, okay, Ratcliffe plans to appoint Paul Mitchell. Ratcliffe plans to do this thing with the stadium, bring in this player, bring in that player. All the reports coming out right now, it feels a little bit like PR, because a lot of fans, there's going to be a protest. United know that. A lot of fans are not happy. A lot of fans are not happy with this sort of Ratcliffe situation coming in. We protested for full sale and full sale only. With Ratcliffe, you're not getting a full sale. We might eventually get a full sale. Ratcliffe is very much going to be an improvement on the Glazers, but it's not a full sale. And I sometimes think, the questions about how's Ratcliffe going to pay for United, how's Ratcliffe going to address the debt, how is Ratcliffe and when is Ratcliffe going to completely buy out the Glazers, they haven't been answered. They keep throwing out, okay, he's going to sack this person, he's going to sack this person, he's going to appoint Paul Mitchell. Brilliant. That needs to be done. But if Ratcliffe appoints Paul Mitchell, as fantastic as he is, but the Glazers are still the ones making the overaching decisions, they'll stop Paul Mitchell doing what he wants to do. And it's great that he could be building a new stadium, and it's great that he could be bringing in Paul Mitchell, and it's great that he could be getting rid of the Glazers completely. But we wanted a full sale. This is not a full sale. And the problem is this PR? Maybe that's just me. Part of me sits there and goes, is any of this PR now? Because we're getting no journalists come out and speak about how it's going to be brought, what he's going to do with the debt. Where's the money that he's borrowing going? Is that debt going on Ineos? Is that debt going on the club? Is the debt going to go up? Is that debt going to go down? How is he going to finance buying the whole club? When's he going to buy the whole club? No journalist is addressing that. All the journalists keep addressing is Paul Mitchell this, Paul Mitchell that, Arnold sat this, Arnold sat that. And to be honest, I don't think that's what we want to know. Cool, great, Paul Mitchell, he's brilliant. But Gary Neville wrote down 16 questions. If you watched my video yesterday, Sky Kavanagh's questions, about they're not being answered. Huge revenue is one thing, but it's near impossible to be self-sustainable trying to compete at the top of a sport. Most legitimately run clubs have huge debts, which is true. And what's the point of him investing if he only earns 25%? Wouldn't hit the 3 times the Glazers valuation. I think, for me, there's no point Sergio Ratcliffe investing if he's only going to get 25% of United, which does confirm to me he probably will be full owner one day. So it does confirm to me the full sale will happen one day, which is good. But I want the full sale now. I don't want to wait 3 years for the Glazers to be gone. We're far enough behind as it is. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, did I say Phil Mitchell? But yeah, let me show you something though, because I do want to talk about Paul Mitchell. And then I do want to get into this really interesting transfer review by the Muppeteers. But I did think this was particularly interesting. And this is a thread on Paul Mitchell. So we're going to dive into sort of Paul Mitchell, his history. And let's be honest, full sale is what we want. We're not getting a full sale, and that's disappointing. And while I have question marks about how successful can Paul Mitchell be if the Glazers are still here and if the Glazers are still involved, because surely Paul Mitchell will want to do things that I don't know if the Glazers will sanction, but having someone like Paul Mitchell at the club would be good. Now I want to actually talk about Paul Mitchell and what he does. So this was a really good thread, spoke about Paul Mitchell beginning his career at MK Dons, how that some of their most successful period, their 5th place finishes, was when Paul Mitchell was around, and he made some key signings at MK Dons. Then he moved to Southampton, and people forget, Southampton in 2010 were in League One, and their rise to the Premier League is unreal, Southampton. And he was involved in their rise to the Premier League, but also how good they were in the Premier League. They actually finished in Europe in one of those seasons. And some of his notable signings, probably the most notable, was someone like Sadio Mane. That was a very notable signing for him. Tadic was a great player. Wanyama was a decent player. Obviously, Lovren didn't really hit up to the hype, but they were good for Southampton. And you've got to think the team he was working with, Southampton's most successful period was when Paul Mitchell was there. And then you look at, he obviously moved to Spurs after Southampton, he moved to Spurs. And obviously the most notable signing he made was Son. Son was probably one of the best bits of business Spurs will do. They didn't pay much money for him, and he was absolutely phenomenal for them. He was obviously responsible for bringing in players like Son. Alderweireld was fantastic. Kieran Trippier has still been brilliant at Newcastle, ended up being a brilliant player. Dele Alli, what he could have been, and then even players like Sissoko and Wanyama. He gone to Spurs, and again, Spurs' best ever period in the Premier League with Poch was when, again, Paul Mitchell was at the helm, and obviously built a team to help them reach the UCL final. So he done, Spurs' best period was when Paul Mitchell was there. MK Dons' best period was when Paul Mitchell was there, and Southampton's best period was when Paul Mitchell were there. Obviously, Spurs could be in their best period again now, but you know my point. And then he obviously went. So this is why he's linked to Rangnick, because he went over to the RB clubs. And you actually look at the structure of the RB clubs. Obviously relatively new clubs, but they're probably one of the smartest clubs in the world when it comes to building teams. You know, we obviously speak about what Ragnick's done at RB Leipzig, RB Salzburg, Paul Mitchell. The RB clubs are probably one of the smartest out there in terms of finding talent and rebuilding. And again, these are a number of names: Danny Olmo and Nkuku, brilliant names. Mukiele, Hidera, you know, again, brilliant names. And, you know, he was, you know, you look a few years ago when RB Leipzig were really at the top, you know, they're in the Champions League as well. You know, Paul Mitchell's a big part of that. And then obviously recently has gone to Monaco. Obviously has a good relationship with Ragnick. And we know what Ragnick can do. We've spoken about it many times on the channel, what Ragnick can do and why he's so good at recruiting people and stuff. And it's a shame that, you know, our club never took Ragnick seriously. It's a shame that the people at the top of this club never took what Ragnick said super seriously, and didn't give Ragnick a chance to work in a consultancy role, because he's good at what he's doing. But obviously, Paul Mitchell then went to Monaco, and again, this is quite recent, but again, Monaco have been brilliant under Paul Mitchell. And, you know, he knows, what I like about Paul Mitchell is he knows the tradition of the club. He doesn't just sign great talents. It's about, he knows what the manager wants to do, how the manager wants to play, but he also knows about the tradition of the club. Okay, this club wants to implement youth players, this and that. This club wants to do this and that. And it was continued up by saying, you know, Monaco had 7 academy players in their senior squad and play exciting transitional football with possessive principles. Oh, I wonder what Ten Hag wants to do. Ten Hag likes the academy. Ten Hag wants to play transitional football with possessive principles. Good correlation there. But what Paul Mitchell does is he knows the importance of the academy for them. He'll not only find, it's not about finding stars, it's about finding ones for the future. It's about finding people that suit the way they play. You know, Paul Mitchell's not one of those guys that's going to spend 100 million on some overrated British star. Paul Mitchell's the type of guy that goes all across the world and he finds those young talents that suit the club's philosophy, the manager's philosophy, the way they want to play as well. And, you know, Paul Mitchell's obviously been very successful as well. And I do think, you know, he would really help United. All of the clubs he's worked at, best spells when Paul Mitchell was there. And, you know, for me, what's good about Paul Mitchell and what Max mentions here in his thread is, you know, how important his role could be at United. He'd be in charge of both academy and recruitment, with the main focus aligning on Ten Hag's style of play vision. You know, a sporting director of football coming in that, you know, knows the importance of the academy at United, knows how Ten Hag wants to play, very similar to how Monaco do, and is going to make sure like he gets the players that align with what Ten Hag visions, the style of play. You know, because I don't think Murtough and Arnold have a clue about football in that way. I don't think Murtough and Arnold have any idea how to play this way or how to play that way. Do you know what I mean? I think Murtough and Arnold, you know, that they don't look at Man United and think, oh, we're screaming out for a centre back, we're screaming out for this, we're screaming out for that. Paul Mitchell kind of knows that you've got to play a certain way, and obviously he's worked with Ragnick, and you know Ragnick's speeches pretty much showed that Ragnick knew what he'd be doing. And look, as said, you know, Paul Mitchell wanted to return to England to spend more time with his family, and he could be involved in that at United. But yeah, all of the clubs that Paul Mitchell's been at, most successful periods have been when Paul Mitchell was there. And for some reason the camera's gone a bit blurry, so I do apologise to you. Let me just see if I can get that back in focus as well. But I'm just, I don't know why the camera's gone blurry as well. That top recruiting ex couldn't do a job under the Glazers. Ralph ignored Mitchell would need freedom to operate. I think Paul Mitchell would need a lot of freedom. The only worrying thing is we get Paul Mitchell in, who's brilliant, but will the Glazers give him the funds, the freedom to bring in who he needs to bring in? You know, Kim Min-jae was such an obvious signing. Kim Min-jae was a 40 million release clause, such an obvious signing because United needed a centre-back so badly. I mean, look, you know, and the Glazers didn't give, you know, and this wasn't even Murtough or Arnold's fault we didn't get Kim Min-jae. This was the Glazers. I'm sure Paul Mitchell will be sitting there going, yeah, let's get that Kim Min-jae lad. He's fantastic. Kim Min-jae was such an obvious signing to make, and we didn't do it. And the only worry with Paul Mitchell is, okay, we know Paul Mitchell's good. We know Paul Mitchell's good at what he does, and he's had success at clubs like Spurs. They're a little bit tight. But, you know, what's he going to be able to do under the Glazers funding? Well, you know, the Glazers have this thing where, no, you're only allowed 3 major signings a season. The Glazers still have this thing where they say, oh, no, to every manager only allowed 3 major signings a season. That's the worrying thing. And some people say maybe Michael Edwards could be better suited to United because he was used to working under those constraints at Liverpool and brought them so much success. I mean, I'd be happy with either Michael Edwards or Paul Mitchell. I'm not an expert on everything, but I do think both would be rather successful as well. People saying Murtough shouldn't be sacked. Well, look, at the end of the day, sacking Murtough is not going to fix all the problems if the Glazers are still here because we're not getting a full sale on the Ratcliffe. But replacing Murtough with Paul Mitchell would improve if he's given the standards to do that as well. The good thing Alex mentioned here is that those clubs have standards and care about success on the pitch above all else. Working for the Glazers and Rat is quite different, and that's the one thing we need to mention. As good as Paul Mitchell is, and as good as his track record is, it will be a lot harder for him at United. And will he come to us? Will he speak to Ragnick and be like, no, I don't want to come anywhere near from United? But as SM says, it's about time we move away from the Galactico model. For me, I think United need to move away from those big 100 million signings. And you actually look at Man City in the early days of their rebuild, or Arsenal before they signed Declan Rice. They were doing those sort of 30, 40, 50 million pound signings, young players coming from abroad, rebuilding a team. Instead of doing those 100 million obvious signings, I think United need to move away from big, expensive, obvious signings. And, that's why I like the idea of Todibo at Nice, because he's going to be around 40 million and he's been great for Nice. And maybe Todibo could be even cheaper with Ratcliffe and Ineos's connection to Nice. And I will say Todibo and Thuram would be two interesting players that United could be looking at. And the interesting thing as well with Man United is they do want an 8 and a centre-back. And the one positive with Ratcliffe is maybe he can help us get a really good deal for Todibo and Thuram at United as well. No other PL club would have Murtough or Arnold in their current positions. That says a lot. Yeah, that's the thing. Do you know what's mad is Murtough and Arnold doing what they do, they wouldn't get employed at any other Premier League club. There's a few of the names. We've been linked to quite a few names under Ratcliffe, not just Paul Mitchell, but we've been linked to what's he called, Blanc, the guy that worked at Juventus and PSG, Jean-Claude Blanc. He's apparently going to be involved as well. The good thing about Ratcliffe is a lot of people he's reportedly wanting to appoint, and again, it could all be PR. You never know at this point, but a lot of the people that Ratcliffe's wanting to appoint at least have experience, and they would be employed by Premier League clubs, and maybe that will make a big difference. This was one of the other guys we're linked to, who I don't know a lot about, but I do know he has a lot of history in the sport, something that Murtough and Arnold don't have. He also wants to bring in Sir David Brailsford, who I think is like a cyclist, which doesn't really excite me at all. But there's quite a few names that want to be going in. But obviously the most obvious one that United have been linked to is Paul Mitchell as well, with Murtough set to be sacked as well. We spend stupid money on crap players. I'm hoping we buy more quality. The thing is, I do think it's going to be hard, whoever comes in that sporting director role while the Glazers are still here, because they're not going to have much creative freedom or been given the funds they need. But I do think, the fact we spent 1.4 billion, the second most of any team. We spent the second most of any team since Sir Alex Ferguson's left, but we've not been the second best team. It does say to me, I think it's the third most now because of Chelsea. I think only Chelsea and City have spent more money than us since Sir Alex left. But I do sometimes sit here and I do sometimes think maybe with someone like Paul Mitchell, with the money that we spend, we might spend it wisely in an actual rebuild that takes into account the philosophy. The one thing about Paul Mitchell is he'll know the way Ten Hag wants to play. He'll look at Ten Hag's philosophy. He'll look at the importance in the youth. He'll look at what we already have. And, when he has money to spend, hopefully he doesn't spend 80 million on someone like Harry Maguire, when, you can get Todibo for 40 million, who could be Maguire's replacement, and put Maguire on the bench as well. And Marcus says sack the medical team too. I tell you what, with the injuries we're getting, and that is a rumour. United are doing an investigation actually right now. I'm not sure if you guys are aware. I spoke about it in another video, but United are doing a big investigation on the medical team, where the injuries are coming from, and potentially there could be a big overview of that. I saw someone say, Alice, do you think this surge in Ratcliffe news is surprising, considering the Glazers were here all summer? They were spending money in the summer. They were appointing people here and there. They were making plans for the future. Do you think the Glazers' intention was always to stay at the club because they were doing a lot of things and bringing in a lot of people and new staff? They brought in that Gary O'Neill for rehabilitation. They said, someone said to me, the way the Glazers have been acting the last few months is acting like they were planning to stay. Do you think that, this takeover was a smokescreen to just get Sir Jim Ratcliffe to finally agree to 25%? And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised. the fact that we've been looking for minority investors 3 years, and then 2 years into looking for a minority investor and having no success, we put the club on the market, but we do say we accept minority investors as well, and they made that clear, is interesting. And then they had all those bids, and then they left, and those bids from Sir Jim and Qatar, which were for majority of control, were very fair, and they ignored them. Qatar paid over double market value, and then they went and accepted Sir Jim's offer for 25%. I do think maybe this whole takeover was a big game from the Glazers to get the minority investment they needed to stay at the club longer, because financially, I've always said the Glazers need to go. They can't stay at United any longer unless someone gives them a minority investment. Now, I always said I'm convinced the full sale will happen, because I don't know anyone that's stupid enough to give them minority investment. It makes no sense. Ratcliffe is stupid enough to do that. However, Ratcliffe is doing that with the hope he's going to get majority control, so it's kind of less stupid. But it's crazy that someone's even enabled the Glazers to stay when I think about it, because it made no sense to me. Big up Nick Collins, thanks for the super chat. If the Class B share percentage is going to work, how I imagine only Joel will have more than Jim. The Glazers down own equal amount, could give him a chance to buy Edward Kevin out quicker. Potentially. I haven't really looked into it like that, but I know he's buying 25%, but at least 5% of that will be going into the Class B shares, otherwise he'd get sued. So it'll be interesting to see how much he owns. But I think the Glazers will probably own about 15-20% less. But they're still in majority control. But I know, and I read something today, actually. I read something really interesting today, and it was actually that the 4 Glazer siblings, again, I think it was said by maybe Ben Jacobs, but it was actually Joe and Abram that wanted to stay, and the rest of the Glazer siblings, despite this Sir Jim Ratcliffe news, are still ready to cash in on their shares. So maybe he buys out the other siblings who were just more than ready to kind of get rid of United and cash out on their shares, from what I'm hearing as well. But yeah, it's crazy they didn't take the Qatari deal. It is crazy. We're only on 92 likes. We've got 500 people watching, and we're only on 92 likes. So please do hit that like button if you have not already. And of course, subscribe down below if you're new, and share the video. The Glazers showed how heartless and ruthless they can be as well. Yeah, we've got 500 people watching. We're on 92 likes. We're going to go for 250 likes. So I need half of you to hit that like button, and we will hit that target. But I do want to dive into a really interesting story that I haven't got into yet. I think this story is a big story. I think this story is an interesting story. And I do want to quickly dive into this. And this was actually a leak in terms of transfers United's plan going forward that originally came in from the Muppeteers. And I think they hit some really interesting points. So I will get back into the takeover news and talk about a few things in a second. But I do want to get into this story because I do think that this is particularly interesting. So let me just share my screen for you here, because this is what I think. This is pretty accurate information. Big up Nick for the super chat. I meant the Glazers don't own the same amount of shares. Good point. I think Joe owns the most, doesn't he? Yeah. I need to do more research into this. I think the thing is, I don't know what percentage of the Glazers shares is Sir Jim buying. We don't know when's he going to buy all the shares, if he's going to buy all the shares, how he's buying the shares. There's so many unanswered questions at the moment. It's so hard to really know as well. It's already been confirmed that Sheikh Yassim is not buying another club. He only wanted United, which is good. If he'd have gone and bought Liverpool in a couple of weeks, I'd have probably cried. But we'll take a couple of weeks. But you know my thing. So anyway, the United Muppeteers on their Discord dropped a few transfer news. And the United Muppeteers, they've got very good reputation for being pretty credible in the information they get. They've clearly got a source inside United, because when they link us to players, they were the first to link us to Mount. They are pretty credible in terms of their transfer links. So they said a few interesting things. They said United are already open to a move for Sancho even in January. They said Newcastle, Spurs and Dortmund are interested in Sancho, and Dortmund are willing to do a loan to buy around 30 million. I still think the fact that Kai Havertz went for 65 million and he's been just as crap as Sancho, I still think we can get 50 million for Sancho. I think if we were a good selling club, we could get 50 million for Sancho. But I think because he's pushing for the move and kind of forcing the move, we're kind of losing power here. But I still reckon we could get 40 million for Sancho at least. I wouldn't, surely we've got to get 40, 50 million for Sancho. But Newcastle are an interesting one, because Newcastle almost bought McTominay in January. 2 seasons before, they almost bought Lingard in January. Newcastle like to snap up United Deadwood in January and see if they can make them good. I would keep an eye on Newcastle, who do need a right winger. Spurs and Dortmund are also interested in Sancho. Could likely be a loan. In terms of right wing options, he said that United are looking at Pino, Williams and Nusa. Now, I'm not a big fan of Yeremy Pino. I think he's very bang average. he's more of a mid-table winger. But Nico Williams definitely looks like he's got banging potential, and Nusa's a player I need to look more into. But what I've heard about him, he's a very good right winger. I was also told we were looking at another right winger that I did a tweet on as well. And then it said that obviously other players we've looked at are like Gnabry and Terrier, but obviously injuries and all of that. And we know all about Gnabry, and we've been linked to him a fair bit as well. But he said there will be more. United's transfer window is already shaping up for next summer because of everything. So he said that, we're looking at quite a majority of right wingers, but those most linked to Pino, Williams and Nusa. Now, I do think Nico Williams probably would be, I think, the best choice out of all of those as well. We're on 144 likes, guys, so let's go to 200 likes. Williams is a pace merchant, but pace will be important in the transitional football that Ten Hag wants to play. And Nusa, he's the wonder kid for Norway and is fantastic and most likely going to Chelsea. From what I've heard, and I've not watched a lot of them, Nusa apparently is really good. Really, really good from what I've heard. So, yeah, I think I need to do a bit more research on him, but that will be an interesting one. Williams is the one I know the most about, and he's probably the most exciting. And then Pino I don't rate too highly. Sancho's been poor on the pitch, and his off the pitch antics have hurt his value quite a bit. I think what Sancho's done off the pitch is going to make it harder to sell him as well. So that was interesting. But we'll dive into this as well. I don't know if you can read this, to be honest. Would that be better? No, that would be better. I don't know. It was also said that, United's transfer window will shape up now because obviously Jim Ratcliffe that will know a little bit more about funds. Now, it said that United are looking at signing two centre-backs for both sides. Obviously, Inacio's been one heavily linked. Antonio Silva, Bastoni, Todibo taps over Braithwaite. The ideal first replacement is replacing Maguire, then shifting Lindelof to left centre back and Varane to bench, and left centre back's a lower priority. But essentially, what they're saying is they want to sign a right centre back that replaces Maguire and puts Varane on the bench, and then they want to sign another centre back. So then Lindelof becomes maybe left centre back backup, or potentially just further back up. I think Todibo, especially with Jim Ratcliffe, could be one to keep an eye on, especially because Todibo was quoted at £37 million, which is a lot cheaper than some of the names on the list. I think Braithwaite, because he's British, will have that tax. I think Todibo's one to watch for. But again, I think two centre backs is clear. So they're looking at a wide range of centre backs and right wingers, and with the idea of getting two centre backs in. Now, the interesting thing that they pointed out was obviously Manchester United's sort of goal for the midfield. What do United want to do for the midfield? They've said United are looking at numbers 6s and 8s, including Palacios and Onana. We spoke about Palacios earlier in the channel, likely in addition to Amrabat, depending on how he does as a Scott replacement. This will be strongly dependent on performance, though, as he's not rated by recruitment nearly as much as Ten Hag. Interesting thing is they link us to Tchouaméni. Tchouaméni would be an absolute dream, but I can't see something that funds the Tchouaméni. They said right back, there's still names there like Frimpong, Dumfries, Aarons, which was quite surprising. What's he called? About to say Ward-Prowse, but what's he called? What's Kyle Walker-Peters? I was about to say Kyle Ward-Prowse, but I meant Kyle Walker-Peters. They're looking at under 21s too. Same for striker at Leonardo and some young players, including Croatian kids. So interesting points here mentioned by the Muppeteers. They're saying Palacios we're looking at, who would be probably quite a good Eriksen replacement. I think United are looking at a physical kind of Eriksen replacement. I think United will get, if Amrabat doesn't look good, United will probably get a DM to replace Amrabat to play as the long-term 6 because Casemiro is ageing. And then United want to bring in a Scott McTominay replacement, someone that can play more as an 8 that's physical. So Palacios and Onana are those. So Palacios and Onana are players that United are looking at. And Amrabat depends on his future. And then they've also said that, big names that United are looking at is like Tchouaméni. They are looking at young right backs. And again, we are looking at Marcos Leonardo, guy at striker, and some young strikers. So right now, United in the transfer market are looking at 2 centre-backs, a right winger, some young strikers, potentially right-backs, and some midfielders. Now, I probably think we'll address about 4 of the 6 positions we aim to address, because that's what we do. We always go into every transfer window 2 players short of what we need to do. But, we are addressing things. I think for me, right-back, Frimpong would be the answer. Centre-back, I would go for Todibo and Silva. In midfield, depends how Amrabat does, but I'd love to bring in Tchouaméni, but I think that's not going to happen. I think Palacios is great, although it's a questionable injury record. At striker, I'm a big fan of Marcos Leonardo, so it would be nice to see United bring in those players. I do apologise that my throat and voice is a little bit dead at the moment, guys. Hopefully I don't sound too bad, but we're on 150 likes, so please do keep smashing that like button, and of course subscribe down below if you're new. I thought I'd go live today just because even though I can barely speak, there is quite a few interesting stories going on as well. There's quite a few interesting updates, and we've been linked to quite a lot of things. So I have to say, now a lot of people have sort of spoken about right wingers, and the last thing I wanted to share with you is an analysis on Nico Williams. This is one of the guys we've been linked with, and this is the guy that I'm favourite just because I don't know a lot about NUFC. But it's saying we must act in the window regarding Nico Williams, whether that is regarding a pre-contract agreement for a summer move or a January bid, inquiring about his contract status. We must do something. He's 2-footed, excellent dribbler, top 1v1 threat, increasing out, but his profile is absolutely perfect for what we need. He fits the age perfectly too. He's the best right winger on the market for me. Comfortably must act. I think value for money, Nico Williams is one to keep an eye on. And from what I've heard, United potentially, if the funds are there, if they can get Sancho off, if they can raise them some money, if the funds are there, from what I'm hearing, United are very open to actually bringing in a right winger in January if the funds are there. Now, that the big question is if the funds are there. How many times have we heard that? If the funds are there, if the funds are there. But from what I've heard, United are quite open to bringing in a right winger in January. Centre back seems to be more of a summer thing because they expect Varane and Martinez to be back from injury then. But anyway, people, I'm going to wrap up the live stream here. I know I'm normally live for 45-50 minutes, but because I'm ill, it's a 30-minute live stream, even though there's a lot to talk about. But look, I'll do a video tomorrow and stuff, so I'll see you then with updates. Bye.